Hey everybody, how we doing? Welcome back to my World Cup show. Hope you're all good, hope you're all well. We're going to round up some of the big news from the last few days at the World Cup, and we're going to start with England's draw against Ghana. There's been quite a bit of reaction to this, as you can imagine. There always is around England, right? When they win convincingly, play well like they did against Croatia, it's coming home and all of that. But the minute you see a drop off in maybe performance and subsequently the result, it feels like the world is coming crashing down around them. My advice to England fans would be stay calm. Stay calm. This was a very well-drilled, well-organised and very competent Ghanaian side. I think the problem was that for a lot of England fans, they'd gone into this game completely underestimating Ghana. The way they beat Croatia, an ageing side, not quite as good as they once were, I think sparked a confidence that just wasn't transferable into the game against Ghana. I said it on TalkSport 2 last Friday when I was on with Ollie Klink and we were reacting to the game. We were speaking to a guest. I think, was it last Friday? It might have been last Monday in the lead up to the game. And we were speaking to a guest who covers African football very, very closely and was very versed in this Ghanaian side. And one of the things I said is one of the reasons that Ghana maybe can feel a little bit more confident than Croatia perhaps going into this game. The fact that England were physically so overbearing and overpowering of Croatia, but against Ghana that's probably not going to be the case, right? Against Ghana it's going to be a different story. Ghana will not be bullied physically. Ghana will not be outrun in the same way that Croatia were because of the physical qualities that they have within their group. So I thought that gave Ghanaians reason to be confident or to at least believe that they could be competitive on the day, and they were. I think England lacked creativity. I think England lacked spark. But we've said many times before that it's going to be Premier League football that England are going to try and apply in this World Cup, and if they do go on to win it, that will be the reason, right? Because they're going to overpower teams, because they're going to be good from set pieces, because of the pace and because of the quality they have at the top end of the pitch. England's defence is questionable. It doesn't look anywhere near as solid as it ought to. I think that they were extremely fortunate not to have conceded a penalty. Konsa's challenge was wild. His feet were off the ground. He was out of control. He doesn't get any of the ball, and somehow England have got away with that. So they've had the rub of the green on this occasion, and I think rather than beating themselves up about it, what they need to do now is move on, accept that it wasn't a great day at the office, understand why they weren't able to dominate in the same way they did against Croatia. I think it's clear, and move forward. I've seen a lot of people questioning Thomas Tuchel in the aftermath of this game, and I just think to myself, what's wrong with you people? Like, you wonder why there's nerves when you watch England play, that are sort of clearly getting a hold of the players, or have done in years gone by. And it's because of reactions like this one that the England team go out there and they feel like they've got the weight of not just this nation, but the world on their shoulders. I think we have to be way more mature and way more sensible in our analysis. On the day, it didn't really work for England. On the day, they couldn't break Ghana down. But take nothing away from the Ghanaians, because not only were they very competitive physically and all the rest of it, but they were really well drilled and well organised. I have to apologise if you're listening and you can hear my daughter crying in the background. It is just too hot for me to close all the doors, so sorry. You might get a bit of background noise on today's episode, but it is what it is. Let's move on. Let's talk Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, I sat on this very show not that long ago now, maybe about a week ago, and I said that Portugal needed to drop Cristiano Ronaldo if they were going to fulfill their potential at this tournament. And of course, Cristiano Ronaldo's done what Cristiano Ronaldo does, which is shut a lot of people up. Or has he? A couple of goals against Uzbekistan doesn't really change my opinion. Did he take the goals well? Yes. Were the finishes of a high quality? Yes. Did he look better in this game than he did in the first game against DR Congo? Absolutely. But I'm still not totally convinced that Cristiano Ronaldo from the start is the best way for Portugal to go. I think he'd have been well aware of the conversations around him since the first game. He'd have been well aware of some of the criticism that had come his way. Cristiano Ronaldo, I'd imagine, is the type of person that does stay across all of that, that does track that stuff, and he does use it as fuel, and he does use it as motivation to better himself, to go out and perform and to shut people up. The problem is that when you are saying I'm back after you've scored a couple of goals against Uzbekistan, you're going to then bring on more criticism, and you're going to then allow that debate, or you're going to spark that debate into some form of continuation. Because I just think if he just sort of kept it low key, moved on, people would have gone, well, look, Cristiano Ronaldo's off the mark at the World Cup, scored a couple of goals, great, we move on. But because he made such a thing of scoring those 2 goals against Uzbekistan, that is going to attract criticism. Look, I've said it before, I'll say it again. He is not on the same planet as Lionel Messi. Never has been, never will be. Not for me anyway. But that doesn't take away from what a great player he is, has been, and his standing in the football fraternity. You know, he would be probably on the Mount Rushmore of football. You know, that's how good Cristiano Ronaldo has been, and he deserves the respect. But when you keep pushing, when a lot of people can see that you're probably past it, and I think the perception of Ronaldo would be really, really different, by the way, if he was a part of that Portuguese squad and he was being brought on in certain moments, at certain points, at certain times, when the circumstances are right, and he was able to give more for shorter periods. I think people would go, well, there's that legend Cristiano Ronaldo. What can he do coming off the bench? I think maybe the fact that, you know, he's always been so competitive with Lionel Messi, and the two of them have had this thing going on for years and years and years, has led to comparisons between the two. I don't think they should be compared. I think Lionel Messi is clearly someone that can still do it, but he's obviously playing in a side that is much more willing and much better at platforming his talents. But I still think Messi can go into other areas of the pitch, get on the ball, he can shoot from distance, etc., etc. Whereas with Cristiano Ronaldo, what you see now is a guy that wants to operate within the opposition's penalty box, but isn't really going to offer you that much elsewhere. You see Messi go right still, you see him go left, you see him pop up in deeper areas, and I just think his all-round game has still got a little bit more. Look, Ronaldo will score more goals at this World Cup. I'm confident of that. Now that he's off the mark, I think that makes a big difference. But I still haven't changed my stance on how he should be utilised in a bid to try and extract those goals from him. For me, Cristiano Ronaldo should be someone that Portugal turn to at certain stages in a game and in certain game states. And I think if he's utilised like that, and you can keep him performing at an optimum level over shorter periods of time, I think that's of more use to this Portuguese side. But we've seen it, we've established it. Roberto Martinez, for me, doesn't seem to have the cojones to drop him. Not a lot of people would, in fairness to Martinez, but I think it was a conversation that probably needed to be had before we even got to this point. Scotland look like they're going to crash out of the World Cup after a damaging defeat against Brazil last night. I thought they'd lose that game. I'm not surprised that they lost that game. I think the big disappointment from a Scottish perspective will come from the fact that they gifted Brazil goals and they made it so easy. For a Brazil side that is good on paper, has a lot of talented players within its ranks, but I don't think is anywhere near as good or as talented as some of the Brazil sides of years gone by. So, yeah, there will be disappointment. Scotland have a level, right? And it's great that they got to the World Cup for the first time since 1998. Steve Clarke was absolutely pivotal in that, and he deserved his flowers and all the credit that he's had over the years for bringing Scotland back into a position where they're now going to major tournaments on a much more regular basis. But I thought his post-match interview was really poor. I know you've just suffered the damaging defeat. I know you think, because you told us as much, that your team's going home now. I know that's not easy to process in the moment. I know that's disappointing. And, you know, I know it from sort of podcasting, and it's nowhere near as, as bad for me as it would be for a manager who's obviously working incredibly hard to try and get those results and get the team on the right track. But as someone who podcasts, sometimes right after games, I know that when the result don't go your way and when you're bitterly disappointed, you don't want to talk. So I get that, but you are contractually obligated to do these interviews, Steve Clarke. And I think the way he's been so dismissive of reporters' questions, and maybe I say this because I work as a reporter sometimes as well, maybe I see it through a different lens to the general public, you know, who maybe just think, well, just leave the guy alone, give him a break. You know, you go there to do a job as a reporter. It's an extremely difficult job to do anyway. when the team has lost and not got the result that they want. But when you get responses like that and you're dismissed like that, it is horrible. And so I really, really feel for the reporters that have had the brunt of Steve Clarke's disappointment. He seems to be suggesting that, the players have let them down. And I agree. There's been a lot of individual errors. There's been a lot of individual mistakes. Some people would argue that Scotland needed to play a bolder brand of football, that they needed to be braver in their approach. I would argue they don't necessarily have the attacking talent to do that. And so they've tried to lean on their strengths and hope that that will get them through. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to be enough. It's not completely over. If results go their way in the other groups, they could still sneak through. But you get the sense now that the World Cup could well be over for this Scottish team. And there'll be a post-mortem afterwards about the approach and about certain individual performances. Steve Clarke's already got a new contract. I wonder if the SFA are regretting that now. Not because he hasn't done a wonderful job, but just because of the relationship between him and the public now. It seems like that is eroding a little bit. When the media are on your back, that's never helpful. And it doesn't, the way he's behaved after the last two games, you don't get the sense that the media are going to be too kind to him moving forward. And that's where you've got to be clever. You've got to, as a top manager, you've got to be able to switch it on when it comes to talking to the media and make sure that you give a good account of yourself, because that will ultimately impact the way you are judged and the way you are talked about moving forward. I think that's clear to see. Elsewhere, I want to talk about South Africa. Massive shout out to South Africa, who have qualified for the knockout stages. Bafana are through. And I have to say, when I watched them on the opening night of the World Cup against Mexico, I thought there was a case for saying that they're the worst team at the tournament. They played really, really poorly. They were hapless. I know it's not easy to play the hosts in the opening game of the tournament on their own patch, but I just thought they were really, really bad. Really, really bad. They managed to beat a South Korean side that I've been really underwhelmed by at this tournament. Okay, you lose to the hosts Mexico, fine. They beat Czechia, or the Czech Republic, and I thought they played really well that day, actually. And I thought, this is a really technically gifted, front-footed, attack-minded side. I thought they'd be fine. I thought they'd probably not get a result against Mexico, but they'd be able to get something against South Africa, enough to take them through as second place. All they needed was a draw, and yet they lost. Credit to South Africa. They deserve all the praise in the world for digging that out. I think you'd be happy if that's the team that you're drawn against in the next round, because I still think overall their performances haven't been that great, and I'm not sure they've got the strength to go much further. But yeah, that was a massive shock result last night. Bafana doing a number on South Korea and booking their place through. And South Korea, much like Scotland now, have to wait and see what's going to happen. They need results elsewhere to go their way. To put into context how bad the South Korean performance was last night, a South Korean journalist in the press conference asked the manager if the players all had food poisoning. He said because there's no other explanation for that level of performance from the Korean players. That says so much, doesn't it, about how that performance was received among the Koreans, who would have come into this tournament quietly expecting at least progress to the knockout stages. That hangs in the balance now, and therefore there's going to be a debate and, of course, a post-mortem if it doesn't go the way that they want it to. If they get through and they put in a good performance in the round of 32, no one's going to go back over that South Africa game with any real kind of, interest, I don't think. I think it'll be water under the bridge, you move on, all is forgiven, right? But at this stage, there is going to be a lot of conversation and a lot of talk about what went wrong on that particular day. And one of the things that was very controversial was the decision not to start Heung-min Son. He came on at the break, but he couldn't have the impact or the desired effect in the end. But yeah, lots and lots to unpack from the World Cup over the last few days. And we're going to bring you more World Cup conversation as the tournament develops and as the tournament moves on. Thank you so much for your support. Really, really do appreciate it. If you're listening on the podcast feed, leave us a review, subscribe, all of that stuff. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you leave a like, leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and subscribe to this new channel. Thank you so much. I'll see you all soon. Goodbye.